Let's do a hard segue into this story with Alex Jones. We have this from Timcast.com. Quote, burn in hell, Hitler. Alex Jones comments on Ye interview. Quote, I felt like I was sucked into a giant publicity stunt, said the InfoWars host. So everybody remembers what happened when Ye went on Alex Jones. He also went on with Gavin McInnes. And I guess what Alex was saying is that before the show, they agreed not to talk about that stuff. Then when the show went on the air, that's all they talked about. And he feels like it was a big publicity stunt.
I think Alex, his comments were pretty interesting. He said that Kanye had a 5th grade level understanding of Hitler. He also challenged Nick Fuentes to a debate about history and specifically World War II. There was also a reference to him potentially being a homosexual. So Alex kind of went off a little bit here. I don't know if he felt pressure, but we got to understand Alex was the man that has been talking about Prescott Bush. He's been talking about Margaret Sanger. He's been talking about a lot of American elites financing this larger eugenics, depopulation, Nazi World War II kind of movement. This was kind of his moment to kind of bring it back. Some people are saying he should have brought it back when Ye was on and pushed back a little bit more, but that's up to people's own interpretations of how they saw the interview. I don't know. What did you think of that interview? And what do you think about his latest comments now talking about 5th grade level understanding of World War II?
I think that the interview that Alex did with Ye was really important because it highlighted why the First Amendment is important. In the sense of the reason why I'm a free speech absolutist is because I think that you should allow your enemy or just anybody in society, right, to really say what they think about certain issues. I think that free speech is so effective because it essentially allows people to expose themselves, to expose what they really think, to expose, and allows the public as well to decide if their views are good or bad. So I think, Ye going on with Alex not really pushing back was a good way for the public to really, I guess, delve into what Kanye actually thought about this issue. Regarding what Alex is saying now, I do think that Kanye is being used by the people that are around him. I'll be honest with it. Tim, you disagree with me on this?
Look, when we hear that Alex is saying that they agreed not to talk about this stuff, about Hitler and all that, and then they did anyway, and he felt like it was a publicity stunt, that's exactly what I was saying it felt like.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the whole thing was planned out. So a couple points, and maybe it's being a dead horse, but, Ye went on with Gavin McInnes. We'll talk about that. But a couple points like, they initially asked us for a return flight right after the show. We couldn't do it. It was not that we were told by we couldn't get a flight. It wasn't possible. They ended up getting a private plane ready to go right afterwards. They also said, we'll talk about the campaign, the plans, and then immediately jumped into this stuff. Same thing you do with Alex Jones. So the other thing too is when I look at what happened with Gavin McInnes, Ye is just saying the craziest possible things. He's doing it again. I want to give a shout out to Viva Frey and Robert Barnes, because Barnes made a really, really great point. Something that we missed, obviously. And it's that Ye's talking about this tax liability that he's got, $50 million or whatever, and they're trying to put him in jail. And he was saying that we didn't notice and we should have pressed on it. He's right. Maybe Ye is trying to appear crazy so he doesn't go to prison, so that he can come off as like mentally unwell. He didn't intentionally. What did Barnes say? The example he gave was that Ye's going to come out with the defense that the reason he didn't pay taxes, he was scared that it was going to go to the Jewish people or something like that. Like he'll make up an excuse so it sounds like he's unhinged, and then he gets a slap on the wrist minimum security thing instead of like a serious 25-year tax evasion thing. So Ye goes on with Gavin McInnes, and he says what did he do? He called for Jewish people to forgive Hitler. It's just really, really out there is putting it lightly. I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts. And in it, this is amazing. Gavin McInnes is like, when you meet someone, you judge them like by the individual, right? And he's like, I don't. Ye just outright says it. There's no way. Okay, like here's my issue. I think Barnes may be right about him trying not to go to jail for tax evasion or whatever the issue is, but like it seems like Kanye is pretending to be crazy poorly. You know what I mean? Like, maybe not. Maybe because people believe it. They're like, how could he say such things? Like, well, he's just saying stupid, crazy, and outrageous things.
But he's always been crazy and outrageous. That's why, for me, I feel like it's him being used by the people around him to push a specific message or narrative, whether or not he agrees with that. I don't know. I've been a Kanye West fan for a long time. I also have not met him in person like you guys have, so I feel like my commentary is based on what I'm seeing in the headlines. You guys have more of a background.
He
to
was
it.
totally different before the cameras
Off
rolled.
camera.
Totally different. And I kind of wish we kind of filmed a little bit just to give people a perspective, because everything was very cordial, very understanding. A lot of the craziness and nonsense wasn't there, and then the cameras went on. It was like a different person was sitting there, a different vibe, a different energy, and everything just changed in the room.
See, I think he got just like MK Ultra'd by Hollywood. So,
but this is the thing. Everything we're hearing, like the things he said on Alex Jones, the thing he said on Gavin McInnes, the things he said here is only what people saw publicly. Right. That's why I thought the behind the scenes things with him that we did was so important, because for whatever reason, you watch that video and he's just like, he's very, very calm, very chill. He's like walking up to Luke and he's like, we got to figure out how to get better food in this house. He looks at me and he's like, we should put him in charge of getting the food. That'd be really great.
Yeah.
Totally different. Camera goes on and he appears to lose it. It looks like a performance. He goes on Alex Jones wearing a Balenciaga gimp mask, and then he's got a net and he's going, hey Kanye, don't be meeting with them. We're gonna take your kids. And it's you're looking at this like, is this guy out of his mind?
Yeah.
But you see him off camera before the show and he's having an intelligent, normal conversation with you. Right. As soon as the camera turns on, come on, man. Alex Jones is right. Put some money in the jar. Whoever's here, go down to where Alex Jones is right jar. Put money in. He said he felt like he was in one big publicity stunt. I think he's right.
Yeah. But at the same time, in a court of law, being allegedly anti-Semitic isn't an excuse for an insanity, though. Insanity.
Well, what Barnes was saying is that Kanye will come out and say he didn't pay taxes because it's going to go to all the Jewish people who control everything. That would be his weird, crazy excuse or something.
It'll be interesting to look at what was it, Wesley Snipes? It would be interesting to look. I think that was the example that he referenced. It would be interesting to look at that particular case and see exactly what happened there, just to get a reference of how that previously played out to how what might be the strategy here. But who knows at the end of the day? What do you think, Ian?
Well, I'm glad
you're more of an empath and intuitive person.
I was thinking about this as like for the long term. Like, where is this along the path of humanity when we look back in 1,000 years? Like, what was happening right now? What will they remember it happening? I think what's happening is, crazy it is Kanye's waking up a bunch of Jewish people and pointing them to God. Like last night on that Gavin McInnes interview, I'll explain it. Gavin was like, I don't
know
think,
about that one, Ian.
Yeah, Gavin's like, because Nick was saying, there's a cabal, or they were saying there's a cabal of people that are preventing Kanye from, getting to another echelon of wealth or whatever. There's a cabal, and Kanye's like, it's the Jewish people. And Gavin was like, I don't think they're Jewish. If you don't believe in God, you're not Jewish. And it's something I said last week too. So Gavin, if you're listening, hell yeah, dude, nice one. And it's true. And
No, that's not true.
Let me finish, please.
I understand, but I want to, like, if you make a point, just explain. If you make like 12 points in a row, we can't address all of them. It's called the Gish Gallop. So if you said a few things right now that I think need to be addressed. One, you can be ethnically Jewish and not religious.
Yeah, well, I think you need a different word for that.
Okay, well, that's an important thing to make.
It's like saying the word means two different things. It's nonsense. The word means something. What does the word mean? What does Jewish mean? Okay, let's define it and move on. Give me two definitions.
You can say religiously, or you can say ethnically. Then, right?
Well, I'm just talking about the word. What does the word mean? Let's be specific. The word means that you're Jewish, meaning what? That you're a Jew, meaning what? That you believe in God. That's the tenet of Judaism. That's like the tenet.
I'm pretty sure we have people here who are ethnically Jewish.
Their parents were, like, if your great-great-grandparents were Jewish, then that doesn't mean that you are. You got to believe in it. It's a process. It's like an understanding. My thoughts are that what's going to happen is people are realizing, like, if you're a fallen Jew, if you've like no longer believe in this and you're just this atheist taking advantage of people, you're going to realize that God is great. That it's like, it's there for all of us. So we're all in this together. And I think that what's happening is there's going to be a revelation within Judaism and probably all the major religions on earth, that there's going to be some sort of a transformation where people come back to the faith. And Kanye will be looked at as someone that saved the Jews.
A reformation.
Yeah. I just have to say,
how?
Ian.
Because he returned them to God.
I think this may be one of the most insane things I've ever heard you say.
Sure, man. I'm talking about what people... people, they're often told they're crazy when they're talking about stuff like this.
Let me just clarify a few things. Kanye West said he said Jewish people aren't allowed to be in control of things. He said the only way he would allow them to work for them if he could put cameras in their houses and spy on them. And And you think that's him saving them?
Well, I think Savannah's onto something that Nick has been tweaking his mind the last 2 weeks with a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff. Nick, when he was pressed, when Gavin told Nick, I don't think they're Jewish. I think if you don't believe in God, you're not Jewish. And Nick was like, okay, maybe these people aren't Jewish. Maybe it's godless people, atheists. Okay, maybe. But then immediately Nick switched to like, but Jesus Christ is the king and is the great God. And it's the same stuff Kanye's been splattering, like this deep Christian belief stuff. Like, you got to get out of that and become like, so yeah, but I agree with you. Kanye has said some madly racist stuff in the last, or see, that's the thing. Is it race? It's not even a race. It's a religion. It's so confusing on purpose.
There's an ethnicity as well.
It's the only religion on earth that happens to have an attached
Savannah?
ethnicity.
Savannah, you look like you want to say something.
This might get me canceled, but my legitimate question, I guess, for the entire movement, because you know what, I'm at the point where I do feel like the term anti-Semitism has been extremely overused. I am. And I want to know your guys' viewpoint on, okay, can we legitimately criticize the Jewish community or people who are Jewish that are in power? Are we allowed to criticize that, or is that anti-Semitism? Because I think what this is linking to is that broader conversation. And I think a lot of people in the right wing do have that question. I would like your guys' viewpoints on it, because I think this is something that a lot of people question, but we don't really talk about.
I think if you just hate somebody, that's hatred. That's because of how they were born or how they look or their religion. That's wrong. But I think government should be criticized, no matter what kind of government it is, including the Israeli government or Israeli individuals. So I think that's the distinction that I see myself.
Gavin McInnes made a point. He said, when you meet someone, they're a blank slate. You treat them as an individual. And so the issue with the Ye stuff is, he mentioned Jon Stewart. I mentioned Dave Chappelle. They both made a similar point. In Hollywood and media, there's a lot of Jewish people. The problem is Kanye explicitly stated in more than one interview, he lumps all of them together regardless of what that really means. Yeah. So like, I think the issue is, if you take a look at Harvard, Asian people are overrepresented in Harvard. It does not mean you go up to an Asian person and be like, this person must be good at math. It's you treat the individual like the individual. Me growing up in Chicago with my friends, we had some Asian friends who were as dumb as a box of rocks. Then, of course, you see the tropes about certain things. What I end up learning, I should say, in my view, the reason Asians may be overrepresented in Harvard is because the culture that they inherit, its cultural elements, are studiousness and punctuality, and it's like strictness and authoritativeness and authoritarian, like we see in the Chinese Communist Party. So you look at people who come from that culture, they're going to have a very, very distinct and strict way of raising their kids. Those kids are more likely to exhibit certain behaviors, like they're going to be studious. If I were to come out and just be like, wow, that proves it. Asian people are all one way or another. It's just not correct. Yeah. So the issue is, when people say the issue is Jewish people, it's the same thing as the left saying Asians should have a higher standard to get in college because they're Asian. And I'm like, no, none of that. A person comes up to me, I say, who are you? What do you want? What does this mean? I don't think Asians are conspiring to get into colleges. Asians are suing to keep people out of colleges. Well, there are people who are Asian who are suing Harvard, but it's because Harvard's making it hard on these individuals who may not have, I'll put it this way, poor working class Asian people being told they can't go to Harvard is, to me, completely insane. Completely insane. And I'm not going to blame all Asian people for filing lawsuits against Harvard, because Harvard is concerned that more Asians means less Hispanics or black people.
You know what? I think it's all white guys that are responsible for all of our wrongs, all of our ills. Everything wrong in this society is because of white guys. I say that as a proud person of color. And whenever we do this, I think it needs to be called out, especially when it comes to kind of generalizations. I think we should always try to be more specific. But again, if you have hatred for somebody, that's just because of the way they are. That's just wrong. That's just how I plainly see it.
See, and okay, so this is my legitimate questioning too. And for example, Kyrie Irving, Nike just dropped him, right? Because he shared a link to an allegedly anti-Semitic documentary. I've never seen the documentary myself, so maybe it is anti-Semitic, I'm not sure. But when people call that out and say, okay, why do we see this consistent pattern of people sharing something, the media immediately labeling it as anti-Semitism, this person getting canceled, this is a pattern that we have seen a time or two. Why is it that we're not allowed to speak about this? Again, this is just me questioning these things.
But we are speaking about it right now. The story about Kyrie Irving has been talked about a whole lot, and it's cancel culture, and we think it's wrong. Like, Luke has the Kyrie Irving jersey that he puts up periodically. I think people should be entitled to free speech. They should be allowed. Like in 2018, when Twitter started banning people, alt-right individuals, I did an interview with Insider. It was Oliver Darcy saying like, this is wrong. They shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
It's weird to me that people are acting like the issue with Kanye West and what he's saying about Jewish people is unique. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, there's tons of instances where people have said something offensive and then gotten canceled over it, and we've argued that shouldn't be happening.
Right.
Yeah, what happened to Kyrie is absolutely insane, and I think he had a big target on his back, especially with what happened within the last few years with him standing up for his personal freedom to choose not to be vaccinated. He was punished by a lot of people. The corporate media attacked him, and I think they're just looking for any reason just to try to get him out of the discourse, just to try to stop him as much as they can. And he literally tweeted, I don't think it was even a link. I think it was a photo. I think it was a poster for a documentary. They also tried to get him in trouble for posting clips from Alex Jones.
Yeah.
So he's an individual that I routinely put, the jersey behind because I think he's unfairly punished. I think a lot of the stuff that he's going through is absolutely ridiculous. He donated $500,000 to the ADL. He apologized for sharing a link without even giving it for sharing a photo of a documentary without even giving it any context. And they still decided to punish him and cancel it. That's over, and that's crazy. And I agree with you. That's something that deserves pushback on. But when someone is hateful against someone else, they should be called out as well, right?
It's not unique to Jewish people. I'll give you a few examples. Netflix executive this is I think in 2018 was giving examples of hate speech, saying the slurs. So people in the meeting went to HR and complained.
Yeah,
they called him in
story.
and they said, "What did you say?" And he's like, "I was explaining these are words that shouldn't be used on Netflix specials." What words? He said it. They went, "Oh," they fired him. You had the race car driver whose dad in the 80s used the N-word on the radio. So sponsors pulled out from him. He didn't even do anything. Yeah. Cancel culture is insane. I think it's and I get all of the woke, crazy leftist organizations writing articles about it because I said the Alex Jones interview with Ye was good because it shows us exactly what Ye believes. And immediately people were like, "Hey man, I don't want to be associated. I don't like that. Those are bad ideas." I don't think we should shut down people's lives, take away their banks, destroy everything because they think things that I think are stupid or wrong.
Right.
I think we just speak up, we have conversations like this and explain why we think they're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened to Salman Rushdie a couple weeks ago. I mean, that deserves to be discussed, I think, if we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff, when we're going to be talking about this conversation. Again, I think blanketly, it's just very easy to say, hey, you hate somebody because of the way that they're born, you're a jackass. And I think it's that simple. And I think at the end of the day, we should be going to that and not just using this as a way to divide and conquer people and use it as a way to control speech and to punish people for daring to express ideas. Because I think we also reached the stage in our society where comedy is being banned, where it's being vilified, where it's being stopped. Comedy used to bring people together. It used to make people laugh about our differences. We can't even have that anymore. We just have people afraid to even speak to each other. And that to me is an absolutely dangerous ingredient towards a society that is on the verge of collapsing.
Let me give you another example. Dave Chappelle and Jon Stewart both came out and made these statements that Kanye and I actually mentioned. Jon Stewart said something to the effect of, if you overuse the phrase anti-Semitic when someone points out there are a lot of Jewish people in Hollywood or in media or in finance, then this is what is breeding the conspiracies, basically. It's what's making people feel like their ideas may be correct. And if you want to have an honest conversation, you start with, yes, we do see in certain areas overrepresentation. That was Jon Stewart. Dave Chappelle made the joke where he said, if it's an Italian guy, it's the mob. If it's a black guy, it's a gang. And if it's a bunch of Jewish people, it's a coincidence. You're not allowed to talk about it. That was Dave Chappelle's joke. Jon Stewart and Dave Chappelle's lives have not been destroyed. They've talked about it. They've addressed it. It's come up here. The thing about what Kanye said is, Kanye praised Hitler, praised Nazis.
Kanye's on a different level from
Kanye said
else.
they're not allowed to control things, and he would only hire them if he can follow them home, put cameras in their house to prove they aren't spies. Okay, if you said that about any ethnic group, people are going to get mad at you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Kanye's just been an interesting example of bringing this conversation to the forefront. And again, too, it really was a test of freedom of speech, right? And who in the right wing, I guess, area really is truly pro-free speech because, granted, I don't agree with most of what Kanye said, probably all of what Kanye said. It was pretty crazy. But again, still support his right to say it. Same thing with Nick Fuentes. I still support their right to say it. And I think that's the beauty of the free speech, right? Is you allow your opponent to say exactly what they think, or just anybody in society exactly what they think, and then society is allowed to dictate if they like it or not.
Well, you let the best idea win, and you have to counter bad ideas with good ideas. That's why I think we were trying to facilitate a conversation here to try to find out what the best idea was. And sadly, we didn't have that. But it would have been, contentious. It would have been interesting. But I think it's worthwhile to challenge bad ideas. And I think we need to do this more routinely than a lot of other people do it.
We got a super chat that I want to address before we go to super chats, because someone just mentioned is an interesting point. They said, "You're still not listening to Sav. She's asking why you can say collusion between white people. White person abuses people, but it's not okay to say Jewish person." So let me explain from where I come from. My point is, I have routinely ragged on the left for blaming white people. It will not be any different when someone wants to blame Jewish people. I do not like people looking at someone and being like, you know what, I've made a decision about you just because you look a certain way. That's nonsense to me. I just don't. I don't think it's legitimate. Yeah. I knew this Haitian guy when I worked at O'Hare. And he was complaining how people call him African American, but he's from Haiti. He's like, he's not from Africa. He's not American either. He's Haitian. Don't call me that. It's like this stupid, judging a person for this. I agree. The left, when they blame white people for everything, is ridiculous and it's wrong. I also think it's wrong when people like Kanye or anyone else blame Jewish people for it. I also think it's wrong when people blame black people for it. I'm like, let's blame criminals. Let's blame thieves. Let's blame corruption, and let's try to figure out how we live and work together, and we don't blame each other just because we look a certain way. Because I'm imagining just the idea of just racism in general. It really does make me angry.
Same, yeah.
Judging someone in any capacity without actually knowing who they are and knowing what they believe is a problem.
It's wrong.
Because then what? You're going to be a person who likes white people. Okay, guess what? All the Antifa people overwhelmingly white. So it's certainly not white people that are good or better. No, because Antifa's out of their minds. Then you've got Latinos, you've got people from Cuba who love America more than these white Antifa. Yeah. That's just me. That's just me. I'm saying.
So they're self-hating white people, just like there's self-hating Jewish people.
You blame systems that breed these kinds of problems, like the Roman Empire is the white person problem is the Roman patriarchy. That thing created a church to get into people's minds. It tried to control the world. It's still trying to control the world through its church. That's the white person problem, is the Roman patriarchy. That's a real thing. The Jewish problem is the banking cartels that were invented by Amschel Rothschild in the 1500s. His 3 sons went off to England, Italy, and France to make the Rothschild banking empire. It's the banking superstructure that's the problem, not the race or the culture. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's the behavior.
And I think Jones actually made that point, and then Ye admitted he was wrong. He said he shouldn't have blanketed all people and that it's actually about banking and stuff like that.
See, and that's the thing with Kanye that's inconsistent with his interviews is I feel like when he does get that pushback, he's like, okay, well, he'll capitulate that point,
We looked up the CEOs of banks because we were talking with Michael Malice, and it's like the CEOs of a bunch of these banks are just white dudes.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, man.
From all over.
This is the problem I have. Mainly it's because I want to solve these problems. Why is the Federal Reserve ripping people off and destroying everything? Well, if you come out and just scream that someone's religious background or ethnic background, I'm like, bro, that's not the problem. Is the system, and it's being supported by a whole bunch of people of all different backgrounds.
Yeah, how are you going to solve anything by saying, specifically, focusing on some of the outer details rather than the actual core issues of the problem and the effects of it?
It's like this. It's like a homeless white man has privilege and Oprah Winfrey is disadvantaged. Yeah, sorry, dude, I'm not buying that. When they come out and they say white people, this is white heteronormative patriarchy, I'm like, shut up, dude.
In New York City, they implemented resources in the official school board there that made sure this is at the head of the Department of Education in New York City that if you're a white student that's poor, resources shouldn't be going to you. They should be going to a rich black person, a black kid, mainly because of the institutionalized racism inside of that school or structure. That's the policies that are being implemented right now that are absolutely insane, that need to be pushed back on and are racist.
For the record, when it comes up again, Semite is more than just an Arab, or more than just a Jew. It's an Arab, it's Phoenician, Akkadian. It's all those people from that southwestern Asian peninsula or area, not really peninsula. Those are all Semites. So if you hated Muslims during 2005, you were an anti-Semite, buddy. If you have anti-Muslim in you, you're an anti-Semite. I don't like that they act like it's only Jewish. It's like there's a lot of people. The Semitic people were a lot of different people.
Right. It's just another word for racism, essentially. That's what the ethnic and religious thing, I think, may have been getting confused for you there.
But it should be very clear when you use that word what it means. It does not mean Jewish person.
There's tough challenges in this space. You know, I think everybody gets it. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. 47th Street was just north of us. When you crossed it, the entire community was black. There was an area they called the LeClaire Courts. When people from when black people from north of 47th would come down south of 47th, and then there was this thing where a bunch of young girls would rob young girls south of 47th, and it was always a racial disparity. You'd see a lot of that. The cops wouldn't let you go north of 47th, and I'm like, look, man, I'm not stupid enough to think that this is the problem of someone's race. It's a problem of two distinct communities that don't see each other, and it may be a component of race. That's why they don't view each other as like part of the same community. But a lot of it was constructed. A lot of the project housing, the redlining, the block busting created this element. So when you go into areas where it's like mixed, everybody's getting along.
Right.
So I think what happens is a lot of people see something like that. They see these barrier streets. In New York, I lived in Crown Heights, and there was a split between the Jewish neighborhood and the black neighborhood, and they had shootouts because they were rival drug dealers.
Right.
A lot of people thought it was like a race war or an ethnic thing. And then I learned from the people actually involved, they were like, no, it's just because they're trying to sell drugs over here.
Right.
And so why is it that it was tended to be black people fighting against Jewish people was not the race. It was that if you lived in this area, the dealers you were working with, it was a Jewish neighborhood. If you lived in this area, the dealers you're working with, it was in a black neighborhood. This is like a deep problem in cities with racial segregation. And there's a lot of components to it that I think are real, notably that people choose to live in areas where people look like each other. That is what creates racism. Or as a component of it. Me personally, I'm going to try to avoid stereotyping someone based on experiences like that and let someone be an individual so they can be as worthy as they choose to be.
Yeah,
right?
man, there's groups and cabals and gangs are real. They're real. People can get together, and sometimes, you get with what you know. A lot of times that's the easiest thing, path of least resistance. If you speak the same language, I don't know if they look like you, maybe it's easier to identify. But just because groups are real doesn't mean that people aren't individuals. When you see their eyeballs, you realize the skin suit is almost irrelevant. The brainstem creature is like what we really are, floating in these meat sacks, pulling on electrodes, getting our bodies to move around. But you see the humanity in their eyes, man. You get right through that. I thought racism was gone in 2008. For there was a brief moment of a year where everyone was the same. And I use that word hyperbolically because I know we have genetic differences, but we're so similar.
In-group,
so freaking similar.
In-group, out-group situation.
I'll tell you this. We look at that poll, that data that shows that white liberals are the only group with an out-group preference. That shows that among black people, Asian people, Latino, they have an in-group racial preference. They are slightly more inclined to want to be around people who are of the same ethnic background or race. White conservatives, same thing. It's slight. It's not definitive. Liberals, the only with a negative. They don't like being around white people.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I think Tucker Carlson hit the nail on the head with a hammer when he said he's like, I'm not racist. It's white liberal women. They're the ones who are voting for all these policies and doing all these things.
I was a white liberal.
I'm like, is that racist and sexist though? Because you're calling out white women.
I didn't like being around only people. I was born in Cuyahoga Falls. They call it Caucasian Falls because it was like 99.9% white people, and I was disgusting. Like until I was 18, it was like racist, and I left, went to New York City, Chicago, LA. I just wanted to be around different cultures. That was the white liberal in me. I couldn't stand just being isolated in this one monoculture.
Why was it disgusting?
Because I knew there was more. I knew that racism wasn't right. It didn't sound right. I knew that I've seen.
How was it racist if it was like overwhelmingly white?
They would make racist jokes about other people, other races and stuff, and it was just like, if you were like, no, that's not good, then you get ostracized by the group of racists. And so I'm forced, like as a little kid, I don't want to say they're all racist, but I think there's just inherent racism in all of us from that environment, whereas like that was normal, and our parents had come from racist environments. I had to get out of it. I had to see the world. Then I went to South America, and man, that's like the other end of the spectrum where I was the odd man out, and that was a very lonely experience too. Anyway, I advise everyone get a chance to dip into another culture. I live down on Normal Avenue in LA, and it's every Sunday.
What does that mean?
It's like the Latino, man, they're getting wild on Sunday, you know? They got the food carts going, and everyone's dancing and playing music at church.
We used to have the elotes carts on the south side by Vidham Park, where I used to hang out. And then the mayor banned them.
Yeah.
They were only allowed on the other side of Cicero, where all the billboards turned Spanish. That was deeply offensive to me, because it was the most fun thing when the elotes cart pulled up. You had $1, and he shaved the corn into the cup with some mayo, some Parmesan, some cayenne pepper, stir it up, hand it to you. Yeah, a cup of corn. And then we don't know why, but there was like a rule put in place banning them from the west side of Cicero Avenue, and that just happens to be like a dividing line where you start seeing more Hispanic and Spanish billboards, and we were like, "Yo, what the man? We love the elotes guy. He was cool."
Yeah,
and tamales. He had tamales too.
It was so great to just witness the humanity and people of other. It's not race. It's not the word race isn't the right word. What's the word? What's the difference between like someone from Africa and someone from Ireland?
Culture, I guess.
Just different cultures?
Different cultures.
But if we're both born in the United States and we grew up across the street from each other, then what's the difference? What would you...
You're both American.
Yeah, I would still say it's more of a culture thing, though, right?
Yeah.
But you said you felt isolated
in South America. That was interesting because I had the lightest skin, long hair. They would call me Thor from the movie because they were like, "Hey, this guy." And when I would walk on the street, people would be staring at me and looking at me, and it was like I didn't speak their language very well. It was a very weird experience. I have a lot of more empathy towards people that might identify in an out group now.
I went to Thailand during Chinese New Year.
Where'd you go?
Bangkok.
Oh, cool.
And I can't remember exactly where we were, but it was this like big market avenue that went really far, and it was just crowded shoulder to shoulder with people. I could see over everyone's head. It was just, and like the person I was with, we were both like on average taller than everyone, and I was like, wow, like we're in this country, everyone here is Thai. I'm like a foot taller than everybody. I'm like, or like, half a foot taller than everybody. Then I went to Sweden, and I was just like looking up at everybody like, this is very interesting. Yeah, everybody was taller than me.
A good conversation to have is the conversation about genetics and the difference of genetics. They call it race realism sometimes. But I think that's an important free speech conversation to objectively identify differentials in genetics, but also acknowledge the similarity in our consciousness and our brains and our spines and stuff like that. But you got to be able to, like, with love, acknowledge the differences.
Tim, were you talking about Chatuchak?
What is that?
Just like it's a famous market in Bangkok. I didn't check out the name.
I don't know. I went to this mall that was insanely huge though in Bangkok, where they were like, it was one of the biggest malls in the world or something like that.
Yeah. That's another
I don't know. Yeah. I also, before we're gonna go to super chats, but I want to give a shout out to Roberto Jr., our rooster, because there's just something hilarious about when they're like 1.5 feet tall, but when you walk in there, Roberto Jr. turns his head up to look you in the eyes. And I just think it's funny because I'm like, he doesn't need to see my face. Like, what, I don't know. It's just funny. Like, he can see you and see what you're doing, but he wants to look up at your face, and he turns his head sideways to look at you. It's just a funny thing.
Interesting.
He's
like, what are you doing? He's like, look at it.
He's a person.
He's got to see your face, right?
In India, I think they say dolphins and elephants are people. They give them personhood.
Oh, wow.
Non-human people.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.